Hey everyone, welcome to Boss Run, my video game podcast where I talk about stuff, usually, hopefully, video game related, even times where I haven't been heavy into newer titles, but we've got stuff to talk about. First off, I want to start off with talking about a little bit about hardware. I do have some hardware news because I got a new piece of hardware that is definitely game related, game adjacent. The thing that happened that I guess I was always knowing will happen and was kind of looking forward to happening, but then it finally happening during this type of economic situation we're going through kind of makes it bittersweet. But it's a TV. I got a new television set. And the whole plan was I would upgrade my TV that I play PlayStation Switch on, my console, mainly console. It's my bedroom TV. And I would upgrade that TV once the television in the living room goes kaputski. The television in the living room was a hand-me-down TV from my sister. It was already old, and then it's been around for over a decade now in heavy use of just like junk TV news and stuff like that, or just left on with like the Google TV screensaver as like a piece of art with the time and the current weather. It was an old Sanyo TV, an old cheaper LED Sanyo TV. Well, that television, half the screen went completely dark. So I don't know if you usually when I go to the gym, because they have a bunch of cheap, like weird no-name brand, Chinese branded TVs all over the place. And usually you'll spot one or two where like the backlight is dead. So that's essentially what happened to this TV is the half of the backlight died. So if you shine a flashlight on that part of the screen that's dark, you could still see this TV, but essentially it's done. When that stuff happens, it's done. There's like no point of opening it up and trying to fix it because you will never be able to find those parts. Like the chances are that particular television set, finding a donor part that still works. It just doesn't make any sense of trying to repair a modern television set, unfortunately. So it is e-waste, it is junk. So that happened, and the TV that I have in my room, it's a television set I bought just before the PlayStation 5 launched in 2020. So it's about 6 years old. It's a great television set. It's a Sony Bravia 900H. The reason I bought that TV was when it first came out, it was being marketed as like, this is the best TV price performance wise to couple with the PlayStation 5 that utilizes the PlayStation 5's like, I guess unique abilities that this current generation promised us using HDMI 2.1 format. So what does that bring us? That was all about, first and foremost, the big one for me was 120 hertz. So the TVs were finally capable of going beyond 60 hertz and displaying 120 hertz, which is kind of like what PC gamers are used to, like pushing, being able to play at these higher refresh rates that people aren't used to on the console side. So that was like, oh, that's sweet. That makes it definitely like similar to a PC. The other, I guess, big deal was VRR. So VRR is variable refresh rate. It's similar to, if you use PCs and PC monitors, it's similar to what is called like G-Sync or kind of like V-Sync, or what was it? The one FreeSync is what the AMD one's called. That's like the open source one. Basically, all it does is it syncs the frame rate that the console is projecting to the TV's frame rate. So it's perfectly syncs it together So essentially, like if your console, if your source is giving you a higher refresh rate than what your display can display, and you like whip the camera back and forth, you may have seen this. It's called tearing, where like there's a line in the center of your screen and the picture doesn't refresh, the up and down doesn't refresh fast enough. So there's like a bit of a streak about tearing. It looks choppy. So that eliminates that function. So that was all great. I was like, oh, sweet. And the TV wasn't that expensive because it wasn't like the coveted OLED TVs that everyone like. That's like the best display you can have. This monitor that I'm looking at is an OLED monitor. They're very expensive, and like the Steam Deck and the Switch 2, whenever they had their mid-generation refreshes, all they would really do is make a better screen. They would be an OLED screen. And it is a significant difference. Not only does it visually look better, so it makes HDR, so is that called high dynamic range, it makes light and colors look better and more three-dimensional. It gives it a sense of depth. The main reason behind that is because black is truly black on these monitors. It doesn't use LED, it doesn't really have, well, it does, but the little millions of little light bulbs behind the screen, the parts that are supposed to be black are legitimately turned off. So it is a true black. Whereas on an LED screen, it's like a gray, right? And that's why, like, whenever you have a radiant or a gradual raise in blacks and grays in color on an LED, you sometimes get that blocky kind of look, that banding effect. So this eliminates that. So it makes the image look super sharp, and you get this like sense of depth, like a 3D sense of depth, which is, it's hard to explain, but once you see it once you see them, it's pretty dramatic of a difference. So my TV that I bought in 2020 was a Bravia 900H. It's a great looking TV. It's still a LED television set. So like the blacks aren't blacks. It is like a lifted gray in the black part of it. But the thing with what Sony TVs are known for is the out of the box color representation. Sony focuses their engineering on the processing chip that processes the way that color is shown, and it's like this proper gradation to what the cinema like would be like, how proper cinematic display, or the professional displays they would use to color grade a film, it represents that properly, and it looks really good. When you put it side to side, basically out of the box. You could get another TV and then like either pay for a color calibration, which no one would do, or try to tweak it yourself by calibrating the color, but no one really does that. Out of the box, the Bravias just look really nice if you're watching movies and stuff like that. It's the best TV for film viewers, which makes sense because Sony Pictures, right? Sony's big into film and stuff like that. They have like massive divisions of that. So that's the best thing about Sony's. They also have problems. My main gripe with Sony TVs is that they use the company that they use for their circuit board, their main like computer inside the TV, is MediaTek. And for some reason, MediaTek has like some sort of like bandwidth issue or something. Like the thing that I did not like about my Bravia was, first of all, it took them like a year or half. It took them, I think 6 months after the PlayStation 5 came out to just give proper 120 hertz. And I bought the TV because of that. That really made me angry, but at least they implemented that. And then it took like another like year and a half for the VRR function to arrive on my TV, and it wasn't good. So I don't use it because it seems to be a bandwidth issue. If I turn on the VRR, which syncs the source to the display, it turns off something called local dimming zone. So basically, the TV's not as bright. The TV gets dim, but then the motion is more fluid. So there's a massive compromise there. So I don't use it. And in that case, I only play games that are like 60 hertz. So they don't have to have like VRR to like compensate for any like small dips in the frame rate, which sucks. That's a compromise. But still, overall, the TV for what I paid for that Sony TV, it's a really great TV. It still works fine. So anyways, the whole plan was that once the TV in the living room dies, I will put my Bravia in the living room because it makes sense. A brighter room, also LEDs are better for brighter rooms because you usually get less reflection, and usually LED TVs, I mean, back in the day, they were brighter than OLED TVs. I don't think it's the case now, but that usually negates any sort of like reflections and stuff if you're in a bright room with like windows shining on. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I can finally like get an OLED, like a TV that's like has all the gaming functions on it, a modern TV, and it looks really good. I can get one of the new fancy ones. Finally, I can get the OLEDs because they did come down quite a bit in price. Like they came down half, like they're half the price of what they were in 2020. So that was a huge deal. So I was like, cool, but man, I really don't want to pay much money on stuff these days because the economy has gone down the crapper right now, and it's probably not a good investment or whatever. But, you know, like if you're watching the news and stuff in the living room, and it's like, it is the living room, it's the social area of your house, you probably want a working TV to at least watch the world come to an end, right? From the comfort of your home. So I don't have to look out the window and see like cars on fire and like people screaming and stuff like that. I just watch it on TV. Right. Good. Plus other nice stuff like you could play games in the living room. You can get AirPlay in the living room. That TV has AirPlay built in. And there's been so many times where people come over and they want to like show photos of their vacation or something, or videos or something, and just project it on the TV. Not too many people have, like Chromecast is on everything, but AirPlay isn't on anything. So that's kind of cool having that in the living room too. So that's a win. Anyways, I ended up getting, after like really thinking about it, because everyone says like, okay, LG TVs are the gamer TVs. LG makes TVs top notch, focused on gaming, tons of features on it, awesome TV. And I was like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of like LG and Samsung. I mean, I like Samsung panels. Like my computer monitor here has a Samsung quantum dot OLED panel, and I love it. But it's made by Asus. Asus did all like the processor and stuff like that. And so I was looking at Samsung monitors. Samsung monitors didn't have like the movie stuff that I like. Like they don't have Dolby Vision, stuff like that. If you use an Apple TV or whatever, like you get that like auto color calibration. And I'm just so spoiled with like Bravia quality, even though I told you that it still has the main downfall that still exists now is the MediaTek processor in those Bravia TVs. So you only get like even the flagship, the most expensive Sony TV only has 2 HDMI 2.1 ports on it. The other 2 are just 2.0. So you only get the 2 good high-tech ports, and the rest are like old generation ports. Whereas like Samsung and LG, they make their own processors because they also make their own operating system for their smart TVs. All 4 of them are HDMI 2.1. So if you have like, you can hook up like an Apple TV, the latest Apple TV, like a PS5 and an Xbox Series X. I don't know why you would want to, or like a new gaming PC to that TV, it'll work and give you the full bandwidth and all the bells and whistles. Whereas Sony, you only have 2 ports on it, which that was the compromise. Plus, Sony TVs are just almost substantially more expensive just because of the branding, just because of the name of Sony and the reputation, and also because that color calibration that they have out of the box that's like perfect. They're usually like $700 more than like a Korean brand television, that's a big chunk of change. That's a lot of money. So that's why it's like, do I want to get a Bravia again? I was kind of pissed about them not shipping with the features. That stuff's all sorted, but the main downfall is that you only get 2 ports, which is okay. I'm used to that, right? All I have connected to my TV is an Apple TV that needs that port for Dolby Vision, and the PlayStation 5 Pro, which definitely needs that function. The Switch 2 is it just uses HDMI 2.0. So that's fine. So in this case, it's fine. Unless once Nintendo releases their next system, which by that time probably is going to be 2.0, 2.1, then maybe, either the Apple TV will have to go, or I don't know, maybe you have to get like some sort of like splitter, which would be just gross. But anyways, I ended up, after looking at the LG, it was between an LG C5, Samsung S90F, I think it's called, and then a Bravia. And at the time, I didn't realize that the Bravia I was looking at was Sony's flagship model from 2025. So I thought it was just kind of like my old Bravia, like the mid-tier Sony, because of the price. The price wasn't that different from the LG and the Samsung. It did definitely have the Sony tax of like, it was like $500 more than the Samsung, but then only $300 more than the LG. The LG had Dolby Vision. So I was thinking, okay, the LG has almost everything I want, but with all the 4 ports, but the Sony is still a Bravia. I'm still like a person who like a Japanese fanboy and a Sony fanboy, and I kind of like cinema and like the colors and stuff like that. So maybe I'll just go with the compromise of not having the 4 ports, but then having all the other bells and whistles I want. And it's just like a drop-in upgrade. So I just went for the Sony because I was like, it was between the LG and the Sony, and I'm like, I'll pay the $300 more just for Sony. So I got the TV, I hooked it up. It was kind of like a ordeal because in my room, it's wall mounted, and to get the cables in the back and shit, like that's like a nightmare, but I was able to, it was accomplished in the end. When I started using this TV, it is like, I was just not expecting it to be a big deal because I already had, like, it is transformatively like huge difference. This one's a quantum dot OLED, like my computer monitor, but it's so bright, it like lights up the entire room. And like the sense of HDR, like it just looks 3D, like everything just looks perfect in 3D. It's insane. When I got the TV, I couldn't stop watching movies on it because everything just looks so good. Old movies and new movies looked amazing on this thing. Even like 1080p stuff looked amazing on it because it would just upscale. PlayStation 5 games, like I could turn on all the features, 120 hertz, auto low latency mode, ALLM, and VRR. All the crap that the PlayStation 5 can do, I was able to do it, and it looked insane. Switch 2 looks like super sharp. The colors, everything looks juicy and bright. This TV was crazy, and I'm like, how could in like 6 years' time TVs be that different? I didn't think it'd be that different. It was the same size TV, so it was like a perfect one-to-one comparison. And then like I tell my friend who's like big into TVs, shout out to Evan. He's like he's returned, like he's bought and returned like 1 billion TVs to Best Buy where they just ban him because he just like buys two, 3 TV sets at a time and A/B tests them like he's running a YouTube channel. I told him which TV I got and he's like, whoa, wow. Like you went for it. You like went for the Sony flagship and you paid all that. And I'm like, well, it wasn't that different from like the LG C5 or whatever, the G5, maybe the C5. I don't know. He's like, what are you talking about? And then he sent me the link, like the Best Buy link, the same link that I bought my TV with. And it went up $1,000 in price, like 2 days after I bought it. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't even know it was on sale, but like $1,000 off. I would have no way bought that TV at the price it is at now. So I was like, holy crap. TV's awesome. It's awesome. Like I said, it got me back into watching movies, which is like great because I stopped watching movies and I've got a film degree. But yeah, despite the TV being absolutely awesome and coupling it with a PlayStation 5 Pro that I already had, all I'm playing on it is Shenmue 1 and 2 HD remastered. So I'm just playing a PlayStation 4 game on it because I'm having lots of fun. What can I say? I'm having lots of fun. Definitely with the TV, I am looking forward to more console exclusive titles. I still would not buy a multi-platform game on my PlayStation over my PC because still like my PC's got more horsepower and you can get Steam games for like way less cost than a PlayStation game. So that's why I'm just looking forward to more console exclusives to justify all that stuff. Which they're gonna slowly and surely are coming out. But in the meanwhile, I can play some of the classics and catch up on movies that I kind of like stop thinking about. But yeah, right now, like I kind of dropped everything. I was playing, like I haven't played Crimson Desert in a while. I'm hoping to pick that up and start playing that. Maybe tonight after this recording, I'll start playing that as to get going with that. Because I'm only like 25 hours in that game, and that game's like a monster of a game. I've been loving Shenmue 1 and 2. I did just recently finish, like I platinumed Shenmue 1. And I think last episode I talked about how there was news out that Shenmue 3 is getting a remaster, so it'll run on the PlayStation 5. And I think that's coming out this year. So that's why I just like dug out these games that I bought these games. I bought like the remaster of Shenmue 1 and 2. It's on one disc. And Shenmue 3, which was a PS4. I think I was part of the Kickstarter that got that game. But I never touched them. I only played and beat Shenmue 1 on Dreamcast when that came out in 1999. So that was a long time ago. Shenmue 1, man, like I have like a deep love relationship with Sega's AM2. What's it called? Amusement Machine Research and Development Division 2 or something like that. Because like a lot of the core parts of my gaming memories and journey and love was mainly from the arcades. Arcades is where I fell in love with video games as a technology, as this like graphical spectacle amusement. And what captured me the most was Sega. My first console was an NES. My second console was a Sega Genesis. And that Sega Genesis, I gravitated towards that was from seeing the Sega and remembering that Sega logo on the games that I would see at arcades at the mall or at amusement parks and stuff, being insane. Like, and they were all AM2 games. They were all games that were directed by Yu Suzuki. So why we call about this, like, and don't worry, we'll come back to Shenmue 2 because it's all related. So Yu Suzuki would be like Space Harrier, Outrun, Virtua Racing, Virtual Cop 1 and 2. And like, man, Daytona USA. I remember like going to Skylon Tower in the basement. They had this huge arcade, and it was all mainly like, they had like legitimate brand new Sega and Namco and old machines there. And that's where I saw the 8-cabinet linked up Daytona USA setup they had, just like the music roaring and like actual like human vocals singing, and just like, it was just a wall of sensory overload when you saw that thing. It was insane. And then I learned about like the history of Sega and like even like the history of, say, Daytona USA. It's pretty crazy. And it all makes sense if you're a fan of like other major Sega franchise, Yakuza, because this is like deeply rooted in a lot of the stories. Is like, so Sega was you could say Sega was an American company in the origins. It was, so the military base in Japan after World War II, there's a military base there, and a couple of like expats working on the base, they saw how like a lot of like the soldiers stationed there, they would like gamble, right? To pass the time, they would gamble away. So 2 expats created service games. That's what Sega is, abbreviation of service games, that would run like make like gambling machines and stuff like that, like pachinko or slot machines and stuff, mainly for the American soldiers that were there. But it also started to spread a bit. Now, there was a crackdown. Like, gambling is this weird gray area in Japan where like there's a lot of like pachinko parlors and stuff like that, but it's like where you buy a certain currency there, and then to cash that currency out, you have to go outside, and there's like a separate business that cashes it out. And that's like how it gets around the loopholes of gambling. Anyways, a lot of that stuff is done by like shady, like, a link between like the Japanese mafia, the Yakuza, and some like Korean mafia as well. So Sega was sold to essentially the Japanese mafia. So the Yakuza ran Sega for most of it. And those are like kind of the origins of it. And it's funny, it's always been this like American military and Japanese mafia connection. And it's funny because the Yakuza games, the series, all of them really have an underlining thing about like this shady deal between the American military and the Japanese mob, which is like a reflection of what Sega is all about. That's like, that game is so pure to what it is. Well, coming back to like Yu Suzuki and Daytona USA, I was reading about Daytona USA. So this was like early 90s, and the arcades were at a race of making these polygonal games, like 3D games were starting to like arise. And that was the big spectacle, that you play those at the arcade, but like $1 or $2 playing those, because that was something you couldn't really get at home on your console systems. And the big beginning of it was making these racing games. So Sega put out Virtua Racing, which was a very like rudimentary looking polygonal game. It was a nice 3D game, but it still like the textures, it just like looked like primary colors, and everything was kind of like blocky. It kind of looked like the Dire Straits music video, Money for Nothing or whatever, that kind of graphics. But Namco, so one of Sega's big rivals at the arcades, Namco put out Ridge Racer, and Ridge Racer was fast. It was like 60 frames per second, opposed to, I think Virtual Racing was like 30 or like 22 frames per second. And it had like really cool music, and it was just something that blew everyone away. And it came out like months after Virtual Racing. So Sega went to you and it's like, you got to make something that beats Ridge Racer. And so it was like GE Aerospace. So GE Aerospace in the United States, military contractor. GE Aerospace later on became Lockheed and then Lockheed Martin. So to give you some context with that, GE Aerospace and a lot of like all these like American military companies made lots of like 3D simulation software and engines. And that was to basically create like war games, basically. And at that time, and you'll know about this if you learn about the story of like Sony PlayStation at the beginning, it was the same kind of deal. It was like a lot of those games came out of that. But anyways, GE Aerospace, the creator of like these military software, they're like, we got nothing to do with this. We spent so much money in research and development to create these like 3D chips, these like circuit PCBs and like these graphic engines. We need to make more money back on this investment. So they were like cold calling arcade companies to see if like they wanted to buy them and make them into arcade boards for their games. And they cold called Sega, and Yu Suzuki went down there and they had a meeting, and that was what was bought, that technology. And that was where like they were trying to make Daytona USA. And like Daytona USA, it has no NASCAR branding on it. They just have the branding from that Daytona track. That's why the logo is that Daytona track. And it's funny because they don't even use the Daytona track in the game, because the Daytona track, that is not very fun for an arcade game as an arcade spectacle. But like that's just funny because it shows how like it was honestly, everything, all this big technology, a lot of it all just came out of the US military. A lot of visual technology, like ways films were made and stuff like that. A lot of that came from the Soviet Union, or even you could say like a lot of like Germany from World War II. A lot of that tech came out of that too. So that's an interesting thing. Another thing, like I told you, the music from that game is just insane. That Takinobu Mitsuyoshi, that Daytona. Just hearing that blasting at the bottom of Skyline Tower, it was just like the whole game, everything about the Sega AM2, like the cabinets, the sound, the visuals just demanded your attention. The aesthetics of these like bright blue skies and the colors and stuff like that, coming back to it, the Sony colors, it was all about that. It was awesome. I love those games. Virtual Cop 1 and 2, love them. Love the Sega Dreamcast that was able to like do this kind of stuff. And then it comes back to Shenmue. So Shenmue was made by Yu Suzuki. At the time, it was the most expensive, ambitious game that came out. And it was like one of the first like major, it like created so many genres. That was like the first like open world immersive sim kind of game. Before you had like Grand Theft Auto, any sort of Bethesda game, the precursor to Yakuza, that was it. That was Shenmue. It was something that no one has saw before. The sense of space, sense of place and space in these environments that looked like they were lived in. All the NPCs had like, this was one of the first games that each NPC had like a clock of what they would do during the day. So you, depending on the time of the day, where you would see them, what they were doing, and all this kind of stuff that gave it that lived experience. And it was this space that like, honestly, like it made you feel like you were in Japan. And then it was almost like the siren that afterwards, when I went and lived in Japan, everything there felt familiar from playing this game that was set in Japan in the 80s, I believe. Awesome game. But yeah, there's like some heavy nostalgia built around this Shenmue game. It also was the first game that had quick time events. The other big important thing was that Toshihiro Nagoshi was also like one of the main directors on that game as well. And that's the guy who created the Yakuza series, which makes sense. Like going back to this game, it just makes sense on how this game created, how it inspired the Yakuza series, because you can see elements of it not only in the gameplay and the world building, but also like the ways that they have like the pacing and the music and this whole cinematic experience of it. It definitely did hearken that. It's just a great game. But yeah, I was able to platinum the game and I loved every minute playing through it. It is so like funny and weird and like heartfelt. I never played Shenmue II. Shenmue 2 never came out. It didn't come out for Dreamcast in North America. I believe it came out on Dreamcast. There was an English translation in Europe, as well as obviously it came out in Japan. But then it later did come out in North America on the original Xbox, which I did not have. And I kind of just like gave up on the game. I think like when you could like start pirating Dreamcast games easily, I think I pirated the European version for the Dreamcast, but I just never played through it. So this is the first time I just started Shenmue 2, and it's definitely very different because you're in Hong Kong. So far, like I think I've played maybe 2 hours of the sequel. It hits different because the way Hong Kong is made, it's different from just like this small village in Japan, where you really get to know this village very well, like all the streets and where everything is and stuff like that, and the harbor. And I wonder if there's an equivalent to the forklift job, because it has like a job simulator. I guess this game kind of does have that kind of thing where like you're a young guy, you have to find like work. In the first game, a major component of like the third act of the game is that you get a job at the docks, running a forklift and like moving crates and stuff like that. And I really got into it. It was really fun. I know a lot of people at the time said it was really clunky, the controls and stuff like that. But I mean, that's driving a forklift. I could see maybe using the original Dreamcast controller would not be as fun as using like a DualSense controller. And I'm sure like this remaster kind of fixed the controls a bit. But it was a lot of fun playing that game. This one, so far at the beginning of the game, you lose all your money. You get robbed right when you get to Hong Kong. And it's funny, like I loosely follow a platinum guide because I don't want to, there's some trophies that you can miss if the chapter progresses, like there's certain trophies you have to get in that during that section of time. So I've been following that. And there's one where like you have to spend as much as your money before you get robbed. And the little trick is you can go to these different, I guess kiosks or whatever, like in these street vendors, and there's like street vendors that sell Zippo lighters, and you can kind of see underneath the Zippo lighter if it says made in HK or HNK or whatever, made in Hong Kong or made in the USA, and they're both the same price. So if you just buy a bunch of lighters made in the USA and you keep them in your pocket, after you get robbed, they steal your backpack. I don't know why Ryu was carrying all his cash in his backpack. But once you get robbed and you lose all your money, if you have the Zippo lighters that were made in USA, you can go to pawn shops and sell them for more money. And the first part of this game, to like, you have to try to make money. You can sell like your those capsule game, those capsule toys that you would get at little dispenser machines that you got from the first game. Your save carried over into this, and you can sell them at pawn shops if you had like a complete set or whatever, which is hilarious. And there's so many pawn shops in Hong Kong that once you go to each one, they give you a flyer that has their prices. So you look up the flyers and see which one gives you the best price out of like whatever you are trying to sell. Really weird. It has like these really weird like small details in this game that just make it like absolutely ridiculous, and it makes it absolutely special. And like that's the whole like, even like Yakuza wasn't an immersive sim to that point. Sure, they would take time that like you could buy food and like there's restaurants and there were like very detailed food and stuff like that based off of nostalgia or as part of the world building. But it wasn't like that much detail to stuff like that. Like you're shopping around, or like you would have to look at textures under like a Zippo to see where it was made or whatever. Those kind of stuff like reminds me of like more Western RPGs and immersive sims, like the Bethesda games, like Fallout New Vegas, which I played, or the Kingdom Come Deliverance games, where it's just like like crazy detail to like bizarre things, and that stuff's cool. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing more. Like I'm going to definitely platinum Shenmue 2, and it is exciting playing that because I never played it when it first came out. But also, I have no idea when the remaster of Shenmue 3 comes out, and I'm not going to start Shenmue 3 until that proper remaster comes out, because I heard Shenmue 3 has a lot of issues with like controls and camera and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the whole nostalgia bait, and that's what I've been doing this last week is figuring out what to do with the busted television. I got rid of that TV. There's a place for e-waste here that I was able to dump that TV. But upgrading a TV, watching movies, falling in love with film again, and playing Shenmue games, playing games that are like 30 plus years old. And it's great. It's great. Besides that, not much news. All I can say is, well, once again, the games that I'm looking forward to. So it's going to be like just a big boom of games coming out near the end of this month. But yeah, all right now, like I need to play more. I need to play more of Crimson Desert. I started Miles Morales because I wanted to see, I wanted to see what that game looked like on the new TV. It looks amazing. And that game has like all like the Sony exclusive flagship games use all the features that a PlayStation can do. So it has like VRR and all that crap on it. And it looked great, but like, man, honestly, like the Spider-Man games and the Horizon Dawn games, I'm really like, I want to like those games. I want to play the games, but it's just like, they're really, really cheesy. They're just, I'm sorry. I know they're beloved, but it's just too cheesy for me. Like I can't stand the plot. I can't stand like all the stuff that everyone's saying. And it's funny because like Shenmue is pretty cheesy, but it just still has some bit of charm to it. Those games are just too cheesy. I mean, I'm going to try to finish them. My whole goal was to finish Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 before Wolverine comes out. And I think Wolverine was like the good way of like dealing with this stuff. Like I find like how, and I don't know if this is going to be true, but from looking at the trailers, it feels like Wolverine to Spider-Man for Insomniac is what what Last of Us is to Uncharted for Naughty Dog. So it's like a culmination of all that stuff, but instead of it being like a cheesy fun for all kids and family, it's more of a mature tone. Because like the stuff that they showed from the Wolverine game, it looked pretty ultra violent and stuff like that. And you can do a lot more with Wolverine's character, even though it is a Marvel character, but it looked more up my alley than Spider-Man. So I'm looking forward to that. But the games that are coming out this month that I'm looking forward to, and it kind of sucks because they all come around the same time. First and foremost, for the Switch 2, we've got Tomodachi Life Living a Dream. Comes out April 16th. So what are we? We're April 5th. So soon it's coming out. So hopefully next week I'll have more stuff to talk about with Crimson Desert and maybe Miles Morales, but we'll see. Probably just going to be more Shenmue. So be forewarned. Day after Tomodachi Life comes out. So I have Tomodachi Life pre-ordered. I have a physical copy that I'll be getting. Shout out to Video Games Plus here in Canada. That's where I get all my physical games. Pragmata. Pragmata comes out the day after, April 17th, because they moved up the release date. Pragmata I'm getting on Steam, playing it on the PC. Really looking forward to that game. Once again, that both those games, Tomodachi Life and Pragmata, the demo sold me. So I hope more devs put out these like substantial slices of the game, these demos. And then April 30th is the Saros game. So Housemarque developed game. It's kind of like a spiritual successor to Returnal. More and more previews are coming out for that game, and they keep trying to stress that, oh, this game is less punishing and hardcore than Returnal, because we understand that it split a lot of people who played Returnal. A lot of people kind of shied away from the game because it was too difficult or too intimidating. So Saros is supposed to kind of fix that. I definitely fall into the camp of people who didn't like Returnal, didn't really click on me. So I don't know. This game is definitely not on my radar. Once again, I wish there was a demo for the game, but I guess they don't really. I don't think Sony first party ever puts out demos. I think it's only yeah, I don't know. I don't remember the last time Sony put out a demo, like a first party game put out a demo, but yeah, Saros comes out April 30th. I don't so far it's not on my radar. I'm probably not going to pick it up. I am going to continue watching previews and read reviews about it. But I mean, honestly, if I'm on the fence, knowing it's a Sony first party title and knowing what happened with Returnal, Sony games, eventually they come out on the subscription service a couple of years later. So that's a on the fence title for me. So I don't know. Probably not going to get that game, but hey, you never know. Especially since there's 2 games that come out right before it that I'll probably be deep into. So not likely to have Saros. It's just not my cup of tea, but I'm still open to maybe things will change. We don't know. Anyways, we're going to keep it at that. Once again, thank you so much, everyone that watches this show and watches it to the end. If you're here to the end, hopefully you are subscribed to it on YouTube. If you can let me know in a comment, what do you think about it? I'm open for any sort of constructive criticism and stuff like that with this. We are on Spotify, so you can check us out on Spotify. It is definitely a video version on Spotify as well, just like YouTube. And then the audio version so far is on Apple Podcasts. I don't know exactly how. I know Apple Podcasts recently introduced the video versions of podcasts, but it's pretty convoluted how they do that. So maybe once I'll eventually figure it out, or maybe once it's more open to just us regular folk, you'll start seeing the video version of this pop up on Apple Podcasts. But besides that, I hope you guys all have a wonderful week and keep on gaming.